Hello everyone, I'm Cheese and I hope you're all having a wonderful day free of Cyberpsychosis. Today's video was going to be something entirely different, and then the entirety of Cyberpunk Edgerunners dropped all in one go instead of an episode a week, and well, here we are. Spoiler warning, by the way, there are no specific spoilers in this one, but there are some thematic ones from which one could deduce some greater events that take place during the show, so consider yourselves warned. So what on earth is Cyberpunk? Someone might have asked if it was 2019 and the 2077 game hadn't yet released. But now animated by Studio Trigger, the dystopian science fiction world of the grim darkness of the near future, where there's only neon lights and substance abuse, comes to life in an explosive manner, naturally adapted to the most recognizable style of CD Projekt Red's game version of Mike Pondsmith's original universe. Before we get started, I know about the fact that Rebecca, the lolly girl, almost got cut from the show as CDRP said that there are no lollies in Night City. The only thing I have to say to that is, if there really was a place on this earth where people can look like absolutely anything they want, there would, with 100% certainty, be lollies. If not because somebody would want to look like one, then because some people would definitely look to purchase certain services from people who look like that. But enough on the duality of man, this is a video about anime and not morality or lack thereof. With that, welcome to the City of Night, the City of Dreams, where most lives are bleak, brief and full of violence, a neon-lit hell on earth where root of all evil is corporate greed, and the end result is always human suffering of the less fortunate, a place where names are etched into legend as people bearing them die in spectacular enough fashion to please the masses. In this world of Murphy's Law made manifest where a person can be anything they want, our story begins with David Martinez, an average misfit schoolboy from a poor family, because of course it does. The story makes it clear from the very first episode that in Night City, life isn't fair, and there is no happily ever after for anyone, and that general theme is reinforced time and time again as the story progresses. Even when things work out, something is always lost in the process, usually that something being human lives, either literally in the form of death, or figuratively as one falls from the social ladder and ends up in the drag heaps of society. And things are really no different for our boy David as he goes from attending the prestigious Arasaka Academy to becoming a merc, or as they're called in the show, an Edgerunner. I refuse to call them cyberpunks, as that somehow felt really cringe. The way the story is structured, its themes and pacing honestly follow that of the latest game to a degree I really wasn't expecting. Much like for V in 2077, things start kind of well for our boy David, only for drastic events to turn everything onto its head and his life starts going down a slippery slope where the only way is down, no matter how hard he struggle or fight back. And in the end, David too accepts that the only even slightly positive outcome for him is to die standing and become a legend in this meat grinder of a city in the process of protecting those he cares for. Admittedly, unlike these, David's life could have been just a normal one if Night City had universal healthcare and free education, but hey, that wouldn't make for an interesting story full of blood, gore and feels, now would it? A theme familiar from the game that is also present in the show is how technology and our fragile biological frames don't always mix too well. While the game focuses on how implants can be used to transcend mortality of our flesh with the cost of another life, the show heavily focuses on what happens when one chromes up too much and their neural network can no longer support it, causing cyberpsychosis and turning the unfortunate person into a little more than a berserk beast that lives only for violence. Again, in a similar manner to how the game does things, the whole going down aspect really amps up as the story progresses, and much like on that figurative slope, the amping up gets faster and faster, especially as David himself starts running headlong towards the inevitable. Things really start going up shit's creek so quickly that it started to become a bit much. While this kind of accelerating is very common in anime, it usually isn't quite so literal and not with such a dark outcome looming at the end of it all. As a result, the show could have benefited from at least a few more episodes to slow things down a tad, as it develops into a show that is quite heavy to watch, especially when it becomes obvious how things are going to end up. That being said, had they actually slowed things down, the eventual impact of the ending might have lost its edge, but I guess we'll never know. Speaking of the eventual conclusion, I will say that this kind of a bleak and violent end is rather rare in anime, as we mostly consume entertainment to feel good, and a story like this doesn't really give you that warm and fuzzy feeling. Is it a satisfactory conclusion? Well, yes, but it is really damn feelsy. The only anime that takes this all stops pulled, no happy endings allowed for anyone approach that comes to mind has to be Akame ga Kill, and well, to a degree Attack on Titan gets quite close, but no cigar there. The one criticism I have for this type of nitty-gritty storytelling that gets darker the further you go is that the start of a show like this often ends up being stronger than the conclusion, and Cyberpunk Edgerunners really is no different in this regard. It is nowhere near as tragically terrible as something like Game of Thrones that in recent memory took the same approach, but it is still noticeable. On that note of noticeable, the sound design, the effects, the music and dialogue are all standing pretty damn strong, and for once I actually have something proper to say in this regard. The sound effects are meaty and impactful when it comes to the gunplay and explosions, the soundtrack adapts to every situation using almost every music genre you can think of, and it all fits oh so well to the vibe of each scene. The dialogue is mostly really good. I mean, there is some awkwardness here and there, but that's pretty minor and honestly to be expected. But saying that, I watched the Japanese voice line version. I can't really comment on the English dub, but I've heard good things, just so that you know. Now, I've alluded to the similarities and relationships between the 2077 game and Edgerunners, as the show is yet another canon adaptation taking place in the same iteration of the Cyberpunk universe, but is it necessary to have played the game to enjoy the anime? Well, yes and no. You can still enjoy the show without any prior knowledge of the world, but it does help. There is a lot of uniquely cyberpunk things that aren't explained at all in order to preserve the immersion, and while some things such as evil megacorporations, Ripper docks, cyberpsychosis, and the amount of random acts of violence in the city open up really quickly, not everything's quite so straightforward. Things like brain dances and especially the city slang is rather difficult to get into without any prior experience of it, and it can be really overwhelming at the start. I did however notice that the Japanese voiced version doesn't have any real spoken slang, so if you're struggling and speak at least a little bit of Japanese, the sound cues might make overcoming the jargon problem that little bit easier. There is also quite a few places, scenes and characters from the games present that will trigger the "hey there's that thing from the thing that I like" reaction if you've enjoyed the game. Be it places such as Afterlife and Lizzie's, or brief views of familiar characters like Padre on the Arasaka list of fixers, or Rose sitting at the Afterlife, all the way to Delamain. The nice thing is that no huge emphasis is placed on any of this, so if you aren't familiar with them to begin with, these segments still don't seem out of place and kind of just exist there as a natural part of the greater whole. One aspect where having played the game really doesn't matter one bit is the characters, and honestly the cast is one of the strongest aspects of the entire anime. They're all incredibly vibrant and unique, and that makes each of their eventual fates hit all the harder. Be it with the tragic love of David and Lucy, or Maine, the father that David never had with his heroic and psychotic last stand, all the way to the lovable murder lolly that is Rebecca and her unfulfilled love for David that she never voices but is still painfully obvious for the viewers. They're all so goddamn good. Annoyingly, the same cannot be said for what the show has for an antagonist. I mean, it really doesn't have a concrete antagonist beyond greed and the corpse, but the fixer Faraday is as close as we get in terms of an individual, and he's honestly quite disappointing in this role. Sure, he's menacing, and when framed with what we know of Night City, his greed makes sense as a motive, but he fails to pop like all the other characters do. I mean, he does pop on some asphalt in a rather satisfying manner, but you know what I mean. Speaking of popping, the visuals of Cyberpunk really do that with stunning execution. The trademark over-exaggerated style of Studio Trigger, familiar from shows like Kill la Kill, translate really well into the dystopian future of Cyberpunk. Everything in the City of Dreams looks amazing with a stylistic approach that can be gritty, trippy, stunning, or all of the above at the same time. The ultra-violence that we all expected from an anime set in this universe looks gory and messy, the back alleys are so filthy you can almost smell the piss and vomit, the countless lights of Night City hit you like a neon-lit ton of bricks, and the Santa Vista segments are filled with after images and slow-motion action so trippy and so full of colour it's insane. Even the moon. Oh, look. Studio Trigger goes to space! Who would have thunk? It's almost as if this is a meme at this point. Anyway, it still looks damn amazing. Then we have the feels present in every single one of these styles. The feels we as viewers never really expected would have been there in a Cyberpunk show, and it all works so well to create an insane, violent and painful whole that is such bittersweet excellence. So what are my overall thoughts on this amalgamation of an anime studio working on a story in a pre-established Western IP? Is it really perfect like some people are saying? Well, no, as objective perfection is impossible to reach, but it is damn good. I was honestly not sure if I should give it an 8 or a 9, but with the last 4 episodes dropping off from the pure excellence that the first 6 were, I am going to have to go for a really, really strong 8 out of 10. On that note, if you're considering whether or not you should watch it, I would usually recommend giving the first few episodes a go, but I can't honestly do that with Cyberpunk for that specific reason. The beginning is so different from the ending that you might lose interest midway through, even if the two halves share the same characters and overarching stories, unless you get really, really invested in the characters. But if you're already invested in the Cyberpunk universe, go watch it, it's awesome. And finally, leave your thoughts in the comments below and let me know if you agree or disagree with my verdict. Do you think they should make more Cyberpunk, or was this already more than enough? If you like this, like it, dislike if you didn't, subscribe if you're new, and check the links in the description if you want to engage with me outside of YouTube. With that, I have been Cheese, and I hope to see you guys next time with more anime goodness. Ta-ta for now.